Let's be real. What is the one thing that the internet just simply never, ever gets tired of? The answer is simple. It's cats. So today we're actually going to be building an app that gives you a random cat of the day. Ridiculous? Sure, but here's the deal. Now that it's so easy to build software, we are officially entering the era of meme products. The apps that win are not massive, serious platforms. They are actually tiny, ridiculous apps that make people smile and ultimately hit share. So in the next 20 minutes, you are going to be building a real working app that calls an actual API. Even if you've never written a line of code before, don't worry. All you need is an idea, a couple of AI tools, and the ability to type on your keyboard. Let's get started. All right, so here is our 4-step plan. So firstly, as always, we're going to flesh out our idea. We're going to think about our demographic that we want to target, maybe some ideas around aesthetic, the feature set certainly, and then we're going to throw that into GPT and generate a prompt that we're then going to use in our next step, which is generating our front end in Lovable. So we'll take the prompt from step 1, and then we'll plop that in to Lovable for step 2 to generate our front end. The next step is we are going to integrate Lovable with Supabase. In this video, we're actually not going to be doing authentication. I've done that plenty in many of the other videos. So we're not going to use Supabase's authentication offering, but we still want to integrate with Supabase because we want to have some kind of backend that we can build off of. So that's our step 3, integrating with Supabase. But really the crux of today's video is centered around connecting to an API, specifically an API that is purely designed around cat images and cat facts and things like that. So we're actually going to be integrating with the API. We're going to be using a Supabase Edge function. If you don't know what an Edge function is, if you don't know what an API is, no worries. I'm going to get into it later in this video. Let's jump right in. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Sunny. I'm a serial founder now on my 4th startup. I also used to work as a senior engineer at Bloomberg and Shopify, and currently I'm an adjunct professor at Columbia Business School, where I teach technology. Listen, I have been building software for over 15 years, well before AI, and I have made all of the mistakes so you don't have to. And my goal here today and in all my videos is to actually help you get your idea out into the world. Let's get started with our first step. All right, so I mentioned that what we're going to do now is we're going to spend some time thinking about our product vision, and ultimately we're going to plug in all of those aspects of our product vision into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to produce a prompt that we could then supply into Lovable. So we're literally prompting ChatGPT to produce another prompt that we're going to use in another AI tool, specifically Lovable. So this process is called meta prompting. It's very effective, highly recommend it if you really want to have high quality outputs when working with AI. That said, we're not just going to go straight to ChatGPT and just say generate a prompt for this product idea. We're going to think very clearly about the aspects of our product vision. So this is what I've pre-prepared for you all. Again, this will be in the link below. I've thought a little bit about our persona, some notes on aesthetics and features. And again, admittedly, this is AI generated to a point. I generated some parts of it, but I've also heavily edited other parts of it because it's very important that, especially early in your product development process, that you're really taking ownership of the product vision and things are really coming from your perspective, from your point of view, as opposed to AI's more general, generic point of view. So this is really a very important time to be more collaborative with your AI tool. So where I've landed is this. So persona, this is built for your late night scrollers, person lying in bed at 2 a.m., phone in hand. They're not looking for depth or commitment. So they're just chasing that dopamine hit. So this is a good high level explanation of the type of persona and where their headspace is at in terms of who we want to target. Some super, super light notes on aesthetics. So we want something clean, something playful, white or light backgrounds, some bursts of colors. So we're going to come back to this in a moment because I actually want to pick a color palette that I like. I'm not having AI just generate that right from the get-go. So, but that is pretty much our aesthetic kind of direction. And then, of course, the most important thing is our features. Again, we're keeping it super, super dead simple here. One tap loop, cat fact display, favorites, and things like that. Okay, so before we continue, I do want to pick a color palette that I, as a human, like, as opposed to kind of just relying on everything for AI. So let's go ahead, let's look at some trending palettes, if you will. So what I'm looking for is something colorful, something memeable, something that's like light, that can work with white backgrounds. Honestly, I kind of like this vibrant color fiesta here. So let's actually click into this. And if you're not familiar with this website, it's called Coolers. And what this is basically just different color palettes that could work. Very handy when you're producing software. So let's go ahead and copy the color palette here. I'm going to throw this into this prompt here, or these are my prompt components. Let's use this color palette here. Great. So now this has like the full color palette. In addition to my prompt components, I have this very high level meta prompt. So I'm actually going to copy this and then paste this here. Let's read what this says. I want to build a cat meme app. I'm going to build this in Lovable. So generate a prompt for me. The prompt should include all the components of the product I've pre-planned listed below. So now I'm going to go ahead and copy the features, the color palette that we just put together, and the persona. So while that's running, a quick note, I mentioned that we're going to be connecting with an API. Very, very important concept just in the world of product building in general. Specifically, we're going to integrate with an API called the Cat API. I'll get into the documentation for that in a moment. So if you don't know what an API is, no worries. I'll describe it like this. An API is like a waiter at a restaurant. When you're at a restaurant, you don't just walk into the kitchen. And in fact, you don't actually need to know how they make the food. You just ask the waiter, and the waiter brings you exactly what you ordered. And that is the power of APIs because they handle all of the complexity so you don't have to. Once you understand this, and more importantly, once you get better at working with all kinds of APIs, it really brings your product building abilities just simply to a whole other level because you can whip up some really sophisticated, feature-rich products by integrating with a suite of APIs without having to build everything from scratch on your own. So we'll go over how to actually connect to a very simple API in a moment. But for now, let's actually see what prompt ChatGPT has generated. Okay, so this is the prompt. So let's take a read. Build a cat meme app. This app is for the 2 a.m. scroller. So it's taking all of our information and has our color palette. Cool. So ChatGPT has simply just taken our components and wrapped it up into a prompt that we can just plop in to Lovable. And hopefully it's optimized for easy understanding from Lovable's perspective. So let's go ahead and copy this prompt. And now I'm going to throw this in to Lovable. All right, so again, there's a lot of things happening here. Let's give Lovable a few moments to generate the front end and see what she gets us on the other side. All right, so it looks like Lovable has completed our front end. Let's actually take a look at how this works. So the name of it's Catjoy. I think the colors look great enough for this meme app. Let's take a look at how it's connecting to the actual API. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look at the code, and I know Sometimes people can freak out about looking at code, but no worries. I'm going to handhold you through this process. So let's take a look at this file structure here. All right, so here we have some cat facts. So this is important to note because this is not being pulled from any kind of API. This is just some static cat facts that we have in our application. So fine for now, but something to note, maybe we want to make this a little bit more dynamic. We want to pull this from an external source. So when I go to this file, this use cat data file, this is what we call a React hook. Very simply, just a piece of functionality that you can run in your front end that does something of consequence, like pulling information from a database or pulling information from an API. So we actually see here that it is in fact pulling this information from an API. So let's actually look at the API that we are connecting with. So this is the API. It's the cat API. There's a free version and there is a $50 version. We are just going to go for the free version for now. Let's take a look at the guides right here. So anytime that you work with an API, the first thing that you want to do is you want to look at the documentation, because we need to know how to integrate with a different system that is not our system, right? And typically the author of that system is interested and motivated to get more people to use their system. So they are going to produce documentation on how to, right? This is the very simple quick start. This is one API endpoint or one connection point into this API. So let's actually click into this. So now what are we getting in return? We're getting some information when we hit this endpoint or connection point. And very simply, it gives us some pieces of information, but most importantly, it's the URL of an image. And this is cool image right here, but this is the actual image that we're getting. So when I refresh this page, I get another image. So what this specific connection point is doing, it's just giving us a random image. And that is exactly what our AP or what our code here is doing. Lovable is connecting directly to this API. Now, the reason why this is fine in this use case is because this specific API endpoint does not have any protection around it. Anybody can connect to it. But most APIs will require some kind of API key, which is essentially a password and username and password put into one, because most APIs usually charge for usage of their APIs. So they want to make sure that when you use a key, they can track your usage and make sure that no one without a key cannot access stuff. The issue, though, is if we enable us to connect to an API here, which is in our front end, we risk exposing our API key, which is a major problem because then any hacker can just lift it up. So you don't have to be too understanding of the deeper reasons as to why this is not the best approach, but just kind of take it for face value that when connecting with an API, we don't necessarily want to leave this in our front-end code. Instead, we want to do that in our backend. So that brings us to our next step. We are going to go ahead and create a Supabase instance for this project. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our Supabase instance. Again, Lovable used to have it over here, but now they're pushing their own cloud product. I haven't tested it yet, so I'm going to stick with Supabase for now. I'm going to click this cloud button, and over here, it says already have a Supabase project. We're going to connect it down here, and then I'm going to hit continue. This is already connected to my Supabase account. If you don't have Supabase, you should go to supabase.com and go ahead and set up an account. Just makes backend processing so much easier. So let's go ahead and continue. And I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new project for this. All right, and we're going to call it Cat Joy because that's the name of our amazing app. Great. So we've gone ahead and created our Supabase project, but now we have to go back and link it to our Lovable project by clicking this connect button. Okay, so now it's connecting our Lovable project to our Supabase project, which is great. It's asking us for a bunch of things, but here's what I want it to do. I want to move that logic of connecting to the Cat API to our backend. It's just better practice, and eventually when we want to integrate with more sophisticated APIs, that's basically going to be where the logic lives. So here's what I'm going to prompt it. Let's move the connection to the Cat API from my front-end code to Supabase, specifically an Edge function. I'll explain that in a moment. So while that's running, let's actually take a moment to really understand what an Edge function is. So an Edge function is a concept that is related to your Supabase instance, your backend. And all it is that it's a small piece of code that runs on Supabase. In our case, our app will not speak, when I say our app, by the way, I mean our front-end app. Our front-end app will not speak directly to the Cat's API. It was, but now it's not because we want to store this in our backend. Instead, our front-end is going to send a request to Supabase, specifically to the Supabase's Edge function. So then the Edge function calls the Cat API, gets the information back, and then passes it back to the app. This is really best practice when connecting with an API. You want to kind of own that integration process, and you want to do it by plugging it into your backend, specifically Supabase in this case. All right, so it looks like this is done, and it has successfully moved our connection to the API to the Edge function. I'm going to just confirm that this is connected. I'm going to refresh. Great. So it looks like this is connected. This is pulling cat photos from our backend. All right. So I want to actually show you what Lovable has done. So this is our backend. This is our Supabase instance. In the past, in previous videos, we've spent some time in the table editor. We've spent some time in the authentication section, but now we're going to actually spend some time in the Edge functions. So what Lovable has done is it has created an Edge function for us in the past couple of minutes. So if I click on this, this is all the information related to this Edge function. These are all the times it was requested because I just clicked that button over and over again. You can see more information on when it was called and some information on like the underlying operational system behind it. But let's look at the code. And again, I know people are a little allergic to code, but we're going to walk through this together. So you see here, this is where the magic happens, right? This is like fetching the data from the Cat API. And that's what that's doing. And very simply, it's returning it. It's a very, very simple Edge function. In the future, though, when we want to use a more sophisticated API, we'll create another Edge function. And in that case, when we need to supply an API key, we put this in this secret so it's safe from hackers. But that will be saved for a future video. Now, you're probably wondering, well, how do you make money on a cat app? Well, I want to make this one point. Here's the thing. This is how this works. You build something ridiculous, something that's outlandish even, but something that gets attention and potentially traction. And then once there's some traction on it, then you can bolt on features that actually matter, features that provide a real entertainment value to the user. So maybe we're starting with a random cat app today. Maybe we're going to pivot to a pet adoption connector tomorrow, or partner with shelters, or add donation features. So suddenly your silly app now has revenue. The key point to take away here is that traction comes from fun. Monetization comes from value capture. That's where we are. So just wanted to make that one point. That brings me to another point. You know, massive companies, the big tech companies, they have a major blind spot. And the blind spot arises because of this. They cannot afford to look ridiculous. Their brand is too important. That's why meme apps are such good territory to really gain traction, because the sillier, the more absurd it is, the safer you are from being cloned by big tech companies. So definitely use that to your advantage. Okay, cool. So this is our final product. I know it feels a little unfinished. I mean, there's some small loose ends that we would have to update. We'd probably need to update this facts. We'd probably need to update this facts section so that way it can pull from the CAT API. Right now, the CAT API has put the facts endpoint behind their paid plan, which is about $50 a month. So if you're feeling like high conviction on this CAT product, then you're welcome to get that account. And then, of course, we have to implement the favorites. But overall, this is like 80 to 90% there. And, it brings me to my next point. It's so important to just get things out there, because let's be honest, how many app ideas have you had that you've never shipped? Here's the thing, the apps that win right now just move super quickly. Maybe you get it out and no one uses it, but just the publishing and deployment process alone, you'll learn a lot. Maybe you'll get it out and one person will use it. Maybe 5 people will use it. You get so much from those first set of users that you will not have gotten in your ivory tower. Because here's the deal. AI tools are everywhere, but distribution is still democratized, and that will not last forever. So yes, even a CAT app like this, a ridiculous one, it's worth shipping. That's where we are. Great. So we have our product. We were able to make an API call. Hopefully this demystifies what an API is in a kind of fun way. The bigger lesson here is you don't need permission to build. You don't need the perfect idea. Just go and ship something, because you're just going to learn so much from that process. If you stuck around towards the end of this video, I really appreciate you, and I will see you on the next video.